Hello, everyone. My name is Pradeep Nayak, and I'm going to be the host and be facilitating this webinar talk today. So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, because we know people are joining from all around the world for this webinar talk today. And thank you very much for doing that. So, I will start with a few rounds of introduction before we get to the talk. So, this talk is being hosted by the Vulnerability to Viability Global Partnership, which is a transdisciplinary research, knowledge, and action network with over 100 members representing the academia, the government, non-government, and civil society from Africa, Asia, Canada, and international. The goal of the global partnership is to support small-scale fisheries in their transition from vulnerability to viability. And the way we understand vulnerability and viability is not just in an economic sense, but also to represent the political, the cultural, the ecological, and all other aspects of human life in the way small-scale fisheries exist. The V2B Global Partnership aims to identify the diverse factors and conditions contributing to the vulnerability of small-scale fisheries and engage collaboratively with small-scale fisher communities and other key civil society, NGO, government, and university partners to enhance small-scale fisheries viability. In doing so, the V2B Global Partnership brings people and organizations together across physical, cultural, and disciplinary boundaries through a shared interest in addressing vulnerability and viability issues within the small-scale fisheries sector. The B2B thematic webinar series, for which we have virtually gathered here today, is a flagship initiative of the B2B Global Partnership. It has continued over 5 years now as a collaborative platform to enable discussions on key topics, themes, and issues pertaining to vulnerability, viability, and transitions between the two within the context of small-scale fisheries, but also broadly. The B2B thematic webinar series takes place on the last Friday of every month, and it will continue to be so during the year 2026 and beyond. The series is available internationally through live streaming on YouTube. Details of this webinar will be available on our website, which is b2bglobalpartnership.org. The thematic webinar series in 2026 is dedicated to our B2B transitions case studies from countries in Asia and Africa. This dedicated series is created to offer a collective platform for us to share the case study experiences and outcomes. This will help garner feedback from within the B2B community and also from the larger global audience interested in small-scale fisheries, apart from showcasing the B2B research that is underway in Asia and Africa. Vulnerability and viability are among some of the many realities small-scale fisheries grapple with in their day-to-day existence. Just as vulnerable communities can strive to move towards viability, already strong and viable communities can revert back towards being vulnerable under pressures from internal and external dynamics and drivers. In this context, our case study special thematic webinar series in 2026 and one half of 2027 will focus on vulnerability to viability transitions as a novel approach to highlight their interconnected nature, explore the potential for vulnerable small-scale fisheries to transition towards viability, and the processes through which communities can retain their hard-earned viability without having to revert back towards vulnerability. Over the next several months, that is until the March of 2027, researchers from the B2B Global Partnership countries in Africa and Asia will present their detailed case studies focusing on various dimensions of the vulnerability to viability transitions and help further conceptual and methodological development of the B2B transitions approach. Today's webinar is the second in the series of B2B thematic webinars planned for the year 2026 and the 62nd since January 2021 when it all started. And it is my privilege today to introduce Dr. Aliu Shah, as our distinguished speaker for the 2026 February talk today. Dr. Aliou Shal is a social anthropologist, researcher, and practitioner specializing in fisheries governance in West Africa. He is the director of Creditive, an NGO based in Senegal, working exclusively in the field of fisheries development. Dr. Shal also serves as the vice president of Mundus Maris, a non-profit organization that provides scientific and relevant indigenous knowledge and encourages artistic expressions about the sea in order to promote its restoration, conservation, sustainable use. Dr. Shal is also the B2B Global Partnership Country Coordinator in Senegal. His research interests and practice work focus on the cultural and human dimensions of small-scale fisheries and its intangibles, non-commercial values, fisheries trade unions and social movements, fisheries policies and negotiations, along with fisheries governance. It is therefore my honor to invite Dr. Aliou Shal to deliver today's talk for the V2B thematic webinar series, February 2026. And the talk title is going to be Values of Vulnerability and Viability in Senegalese Small-Scale Fisheries from the fisher's perspective, Insights from Langue de Barbarie case study. Thank you, Dr. Shal, for making time, and the floor is yours now.
Thanks a lot, Pratip. Congratulations for giving us this great opportunity as researcher, as a practitioner, as people, engaged in small fishery, to have this possibility to interact. It's a very important, for the promotion of knowledge sharing. This being said, I would like, before anything else, just share with you, how I would like to proceed. The presentation will be divided into the following, section parts. The first will be on the background, and you will see that each part, each section, is prepared in order to validate, what is be said, in the presentation, of the webinar, meaning that, the vulnerability is an integral part, of the of fisheries. So we'll have the background, the objective, and then we'll follow the section dedicated to see how, which process, for example, through which process fishers themselves construct, the perception they have, on vulnerability. So this concern, also that mean, for example, the religious aspect, cultural aspect, and the environment itself. The last part will be dedicated to the self-actualization and various form of transition. So let me start by next, please. So the background itself is is very important, is enough to understand how fishers, how this community is vulnerable, and used to be vulnerable. That vulnerability is is an integral part of the trajectory of these fisheries, typical fisheries, for the following reasons: an exclusive dependency on small-scale fisheries. If you compare, for example, Langue de Barbarie to other fishing ground in Senegal, fishing community in Senegal, it's one of the, maybe the only one that has an any other alternative, beside fishing. No industry, no other, opportunity. And we have also uh, how we say, the number of pirogue, meaning the fishing boats, never stop, increasing through years, despite, all these crises faced by small-scale fisheries. This is also meaningful because this highlights, how culture is very important, because the dependency is a signal indicator of vulnerability. But the fact is that, despite, the crisis, they face, this is the most important, the second, if you classify, for example, by number of pirogue, number of fishers involved, Saint-Louis is the second, in the classification in Senegal. The production is mainly for local and national fresh fish market, for example, 65%. For local consumption, it's 20%. Artisanal processing absorb 13%. There are around 1,100 women engaged in small-scale fishery, controlling local market and processing sector. And these women are, playing a double key role because they are upstream and downstream, meaning they used to play traditionally an important role in providing credit in country where, the formal bank, don't trust small-scale fisheries. It's like insurance companies, because they say that, in small-scale fisheries, there is not a risk, but there are evidence that if you engage in fisheries, you collapse. So at the absence of, commercial bank or formal bank willing to invest in small fisheries, so through decades, the credit provided to fishers for their fishing campaign are traditionally provided, by women. This is upstream. And downstream, you have the value chain, which is very, dynamic, playing a big role in food security, both at local, at national level, and regional level, and thanks to the women who are, controlling this sector also. We have a high population density because there are 27. It's the 27 of the 18 neighborhoods that made up the municipality of Saint-Louis. That means, in Saint-Louis, the Langue de Barbarie is part of the 18 neighborhoods that make up the municipality of Saint-Louis. But the Langue de Barbarie absorbed 27% of this total population. That means 755 inhabitants per hectare. In some works, it's noted that, Saint-Louis, Langue de Barbarie, is one of the most, populated, community in West Africa, meaning at the ECOWAS level. Next, please. So as I said, at the beginning, the background is very important, but it's itself, an illustration of vulnerability, because in addition to this density of population, the fact that they depend only exclusively on fisheries, it's historically this community depend on mobility at national and regional level. That means we have more than, around 2/3 of the total population of fishers are absent from the Langue de Barbarie for up to 7 months a year. meaning 6 up to 7 months a year, 2/3 of the population have the obligation to migrate. So this migration historically, the mobility, they migrate to Mauritania. And this already from earlier 70. Also at the West African coastal line in Gambia, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea, Sierra Leone. In addition to the internal movement, mobility internal at national level here in Senegal. There are also another phenomena that have to be noted, and known, that then mobilities comprise also, a very, amazing, aspect. That means, fishers from Saint-Louis use also in order to face, the crisis, happening in fisheries, or when, for example, their operation are no longer, profitable, to use the blare, meaning the vague frontier or the porous border is, between industrial fisheries and small-scale fishing, meaning because they are skilled enough, they succeed in getting a job on board big, in the vessels on which they can work for a couple of months, amass capital in order to be able to renew their pirogue. I mean, it's for investment. That means, what I would like just more to underline there is that there is a very, I would say, complicated relationship between industrial fisheries and small-scale fisheries, as fishers use also this pathway in order to maintain themselves, in small-scale fisheries. That means, the fact of shifting from small-scale fisheries to industrial fisheries is just for a short term in order to have money and come back and reinvest it, in a small-scale fishery. This kind of mobility, is very, very impressive. Next, please. So concerning the objective of this contribution, it's about, demonstrating how the dynamics of small-scale fisheries socio-cultural system are consistent with vulnerability. Meaning it's a value, intersect value, of this socio-ecological system. The second is to explain how the survival of such an activity and its dynamics are only guaranteed by the ability of fishers to navigate perpetually between vulnerability and viability. And third, assess the meanings given by fishers to the concept of vulnerability and transition, with an emphasis on viability, which, from their perspective, should be assessed in a more holistic manner, integrating the cultural dimension. But I insist in making this remark. I mean, hence the imperative to dissociate the factor of vulnerability inherent in the encompassing environment from other external factors that may arise from more content. What I would like to say here is that, it's very important to distinguish this, the vulnerability as a value, as a characteristic, inherent to the small-scale fisheries on one hand, with vulnerability deriving from contemporary processes, like, for example, if we see for our country, gas extractive industries are very recent. If you replace it in the trajectory of our small-scale fisheries, There are some aspects of globalization that are really very recent. There are some, issues, challenges like even in governance that are very recent as drivers, of vulnerability. If you compare them to what really must be considered like vulnerabilities, proper and proper and be integral part of the socio-ecological system, its dynamic, etc. Next, please. So here it's about, as I said, what I said, concerning the imperative to make a difference between, vulnerabilities that are, part of fisheries, part of the socio-ecological system that can be explained by, for example, for me and based on what I learned through the this mission, for the purpose of the case study, and in addition to other, highlight I had, during these past decades, is the fact that, the vulnerability is a perception shaped by the socio-ecological system dynamics as a whole, because in connection with the beliefs, that are still to, alive, fishers never until now, I rarely, hear fishers talking about climate change. Fishers talk about tribulation of nature. So in their understanding or in their perception, for example, all that we can classify as, indicator or forms of vulnerability have to be put in the score of the morphology of the site. Because Langue de Barbarie, as we see, through the map that I caught from Google Map, is very specific. Itself is a driver, of vulnerability. Because if you see, how because you have a maritime sector consisting of a beach under the influence of marine dynamics, a dune sector under the influence of the wind limited to the upper beach and the coastal dunes, plus a fluvial sector subject to the strong dynamic of river flood and the upwelling of marine waters. As a result, it's a community settlement site wedged between one, the sand banks fed by the Sahara Desert from Mauritania. Second, located 2 meters below sea level. And third is a high level of erosion. And last, a river mouth that cause dozens of deaths per year. So it's a special morphology that itself is synonymous of vulnerability. Next, please. And there are interesting works, by the university, by geographer and some, I think, physician, from University Cheikh Anta Diop and Université Gaston Berger, reporting, about, the fact that flood, flood is, these natural disasters, are are part of the of the environment of Saint Louis. Because And there is also the aggravation of flood deriving from the disruption of the ecosystem due to the construction of two dams, Jama, north of, and Manantali. So just to say that, to demonstrate that the society, as I said, is itself and alone enough as to be a driver of vulnerabilities. Next, please. So if you see on your right side, you have the in the middle you have the island. This is the first capital of Senegal. When the settlers came, the French colonialists, they were, this island was the capital of Senegal. This is the town of Saint-Louis. And if you see on your left side, you have a bridge. This connects the island with the rest of the continent of Senegal, and left and right. You have these, this is a community, fishers community, this is on right. And as you see, you have erosion, from sea, the flood from the river. So even the map is enough, to really explain, the condition, of vulnerability this community used to live. Next, please. So in addition to the spatial morphology as a driver of vulnerability, we have also the characteristic of small fisheries, who's one of, a sector where, characterized by uncertainty that is, fundamental for the meaning given to vulnerability. Because for fishers, for example, as far as you have I say no alternative way to make a living beside, small scale fishery, you have no guarantee of revenue. For example, if you see in the small scale fisheries, it's not the effort you provide that is remunerated. No, you don't get remuneration in counterpart of your effort. You get remuneration in counterpart of the result of the effort. That's the reason why we have what we call the sharing system. You don't have a revenue. The system, people go to sea, come back, after deduction of the, transaction cost, the rest is divided into the material, equipment, etc., etc. But it's not the same system. It can change from one, fishing technique to another. But broadly, it works like that. But there is no revenue because there is any fishing boat who can take the responsibility to say, okay, I guarantee you a revenue, and then per month or per week, and then let's go to sea. No. Unlike in agriculture, for example, because in agriculture, even if you have, some similar risk, the correlation of risk in fisheries is more higher. Anyway, and if you see, for example, and the other source of vulnerability that is also a characteristic of small scale fishery is the fact that 80% of the total catch are composed of small, what we call coastal small scale pelagic. And at the same time, based on some work, like by some scientists, biologists, and scientists specialized on these potential these stocks, like Curie. Uh, Small scale coastal small pelagics are the most vulnerable species to seasonal variation. Uh, so in addition to this to this constraint to these issues, uh, and this the last one that is specific to women is that fishers, those who are involved in harvesting, may as some issues they are facing as drivers of vulnerability, but women that who are engaged in the value chain and controlling the processing and fish fresh marketing are also specific, challenging issues that are source of vulnerability, drivers of vulnerability. That means, access to market is very, very difficult, succeeding in marketing, her product on time is difficult, So you have a lot of, economic losses, after capture because ice is, conservation is challenging. And all these, question related, to the to market issues, market related issues are, reinforced by the fact that, Saint-Louis, Langue de Barbarie is far from, all, urban zone, and there there is an absence of infrastructure that may enable, these women to really, take the maximum of benefits from the activity, this activity. Next, please. Now, in addition to this, I think it's a very important, as I said, to make difference between, this rooted, drivers of vulnerabilities and you know, integral part of the socio-cultural system on one hand, and on the other, this kind, of vulnerability we are now, talking about that are vulnerability in connection with more contemporary, processes, the poor governance, globalization, and blue economy. And there are, a very long list we could, talk about. But I think, the main one are, for example, spatial competition, that question really the fisher tradition right for mobility. And this is, in connection with extractive industry, harassment on maritime borders, this is, related to policies, governance, at regional level, rarefaction of raw material for women, leaning on small-scale pelagics, for example, in connection with fish meat industries, new generation of fisheries agreement, because in our country now we have been, criticizing European Union for years and years, and even the running power used a lot, this how we say this this issue to mobilize, fishers. Women were very active, in this process that led to the election of this new government. But I can say that objectively, I prefer what we had before than what's going on now in Senegal, because we don't know who's doing what. Before you know that, this is from Italy, this one is from, how we say, France, this one is. Now we have, China's people who are really, using fish meal, pelagic juvenile for, I don't know, for for fish meal. And in counterpart, they exporting, fish for Senegal. Senegal is gradually depending, on China to eat fish. This is really the real situation now. And with all this collateral, for example, implication on women and so on. Okay. So there is a corollary, effect. This is the impact on women's traditional status, because women through years gain in, in social, gain in, how you say, in have improved, their social status, because in historically, based on sexual specific, criteria, because there was sexual division of labor, fish is for women, the man don't have to touch fish, even if you clean fish, for example, you are, can be, maybe somewhere considered like somebody no normal as a man, but by how we say this is how we say sexual specific, uh, uh, based, specialization of women on fish. They, through years, amass succeed in having money, gaining power, having a social status, getting prestige and all. But when the fish, when this fish, is no more available for processors, for example, or when the fresh fish now is so expensive, because having fish from Senegal, price of a fish from small fisheries is not the same as fish from farm from big aquaculture industry from China. If you go to our central market now, there are many women who are going, just, went over there in early morning to buy fish, go back to market. But this fish, is farmed in China and using, our sardinella, for fish meal. Anyway, uh, another implication also on social organization, because we have in a sector where formal institutions are absent. You don't have bank, you have a need for social protection, you have need for medical care, and people succeed in organizing, into some, solidarity chain, traditionally speaking. But these solidarity chain are fed in money by, the revenues they have. But when, the situation is very complicated and the revenue, just go down, those that can lead, solidarity is also affected. And we have the food security related issue also, in connection with this governance, this poor governance system. Next, please. Okay. Uh, the survival of religious syncretism is part of the factors that uh, let me say the founding the factor is one of the factor that has contributed to the way fishers represent themselves vulnerability. That means it's you have, for example, uh, what for example the today, of course, you have many impact deriving, meaning, indicators of vulnerability deriving from, a couple of drivers like poor governance, like blue economy, with, with regard to the spatial conflict, happening today between, the extractive, industries and some of the fisheries. Uh, we have, but despite all that, it's not, for example, I have couple of years of experience, in the fisheries community. And a month ago, I was spending, I went several times, a couple of times in Saint-Louis. It was on about a research project, video on, having the perception, fishes have on climate change. But, it's amazing because you can spend, all day long. You want to have one single fisherman who pointing out, this focusing, climate change as a main driver. That means beside all this happening, processes for fishers, as I said, the tribulation of nature is something that is still here as a main, factor that decide of everything. And for me, sometimes I'm so frustrated to not be able, to live, to share this experience, concretely speaking, even now in 2025, the same. So it's very interesting to see how still these beliefs are. And the illustration of the survival of this belief is can be illustrated in many ways. But what is one of the most outstanding way to demonstrate it is the money fishers till now spend. If you have a look on their budget head, meaning all the annual transaction costs related to their activity and all, 40% is spent for the security at sea, meaning security at sea, the security of the equipment against, but also how to secure, for example, the fishing campaign, how to guarantee, for example, the revenue, having a good campaign. And this is still the same. Saint-Louis, Langue de Barbarie has their goddess, Mam Kumbaban. Yof, everywhere they have their goddess still. So this mixture between the beliefs in Allah, in Muhammad, with some local leaders, Muslim leaders. And in addition, you have also the beliefs, in goddess, There are all women. And it's a reality still. And this way of thinking, and doing is to be taken into account by, those who are engaged, in, management, I say that, here, for example, as I said, for years, the government have spent, money, important, amount of money to generalize the use of life jacket. Of course, you have some fishers who, now integrated in their way of doing, wearing the jacket. But, the money they spent, for this, pay to this kind of priests, because in any community you have a family, who is depository of the, all this knowledge concerning the sea, security, supernatural power and all. But as far as you believe in, so you will put, the all kind of vulnerability, all kind of uncertainty in the score of the, this godness will, whatever they are, God for Muslim, because we are 80% Muslim, or it can be also God, as a supernatural, because animism is still alive. That's why I talk about this syncretism, this mixture is very strong. Next, please. Okay. So this is the section, talking about how important it is to be more realistic when we talk about, vulnerability and when we use indicators. Indicators can't be, always monetary, material or monetary. Because in my, this is, the highlight of the study, the work done through the case studies in Langue de Barbarie, reinforce it by prior, experience, prior studies. So what we did, the highlight, from the case studies, was very important, but it confirmed, the survival, of a lot of, happenings. I noted, a couple of years ago, probably, because since 1988, I'm engaged, in small-scale fishery. It doesn't, change a lot. And I think, that's why, I think it's very important uh, to know that, the attachment of fisher to their métier goes beyond a strictly economic occupation. No. Because it's a desire to perpetuate a way of life, regardless of the cost, and a different perception of viability centered on the cultural dimension. This is evidenced by the following fact. Also, there is a talk of a crisis with with high level of debt among some families. For example, some can't imagine, how you say, how fishers are facing, debt, just to maintain themselves, in this sector. A lot of, maybe there are some person, engaged in fisheries, in particular economists, for example, in particular, for whom, this crisis is antonymous to any will to be maintained as fishers in small-scale fisheries, because they ignore, some very important aspects. Because you have a social prestige when you lose your fishing unit, you have no more, how you say, you lose your social status. So ownership is very important. Whatever is the meaning of the ownership, is your period, is it how you say, profitable? Your fishing season, are you in debt? Someone can't imagine the number of fishers who can't even financially survive. A lot. But for cultural, purpose, they have to be, because it's very important. It's very important. And there is, when we talk about self-actualization, for example, or job satisfaction, that is very difficult to assess. But I think with comment il s'appelle? It's not Maslow, but Maslow or Polnack. We had a couple of years ago, carry out a research, and I was, I did one in Langue de Barbarie. I forgot to mention it. It's on job satisfaction through a kind of hierarchy of, when you make a hierarchy of social needs and all, I apply it, in Saint-Louis. And I noted that, it's one of the community in Senegal where the attachment on fisheries is, the highest. But unfortunately, people would heard about this clandestine migration to the Canaria, for example. Of course, there are many young people who go to Canaria from Langue de Barbarie. But it's very important also to see, okay, is it just, a shifting, just how we say, shifting from, fishery for definitively, or is it a kind of transition, for example, for viability? Part of this, is, you know, is, is for me, having, shared with fishers and making some participatory observation, I realized that, those who went to Canaria, are helping, families to maintain themselves, in the small fishery, because the money they win, large part of the money they win is dedicated, for renewing, the pirogue, for, I don't know, building, new. So that means, the this attachment, to this confirms the fact that, it's not only, economic activity is a way of living, lifestyle, I would say, And the other thing is that, the number of pirogue is increasing, but of course, people are migrating. For some non-informed observers, it's an illustration of a high crisis in fisheries. Okay, but the number of pirogue is increasing. I have now to just, it's already, okay, oh la la. I finished, okay. Next, please, I will summarize because it's time now. I'm sorry. So we have various form of transition, with you have inside snorkel fisheries, people can shift from one technology to another. And this is dynamized by new markets also. When you have a new market, sometimes, for example, the cephalopods are not, traditional species. We don't have traditional cephalopod fishes, but these fishes, it's from the 18th, beginning 19th, that the cephalopod, chain that have been, start in Senegal. And now it's a part of our small-scale fisheries socio-ecological system. But before, we didn't have any fishers interested by the species. That means market have been found, have been founded, these fishers. That is, you have cephalopod, we have also the symbiomes, that is a gasteropod by Chinese, but we have many other species that enable, fishes. That means the combination with new technology, because when you shift from one métier for another, because you have an opportunity, you have to modify your technology of fishing gear and work for a new market. So technology market, are, pathway for transition. But at the same time, if you see, we can make a long list of species designated for exportation. When fishes shift, because the fishery doesn't the revenue are better over there. One of the implications is on food security. They just leave down all the traditional species they catch that are for local consumption, so for food security. Next, please. We can have yes, this is the shark, the same with the shark fin. The shark fin, for example, the shark was considered like fishes have been confronted to the how we say, the diminution of the revenue as a big opportunity, from the 2000s. But sharks also, in red, we have the impact of transition, because transition, as I said, is not how we say, is not, how we say, is not have some societal societal costs. If it's not, for example, on the environment, on species, it's of social, order. For example, this contribute a lot, to the dissemination of shark stocks, with shark fin market. And as they use also, how you say, the drift nets also, competing with the other fishers, who use, different nets. So this you engender, social conflict. So transition also, when it operates, have some, societal costs. Next, please. Yes, this is just some example. 2017, the emergence of the Concombo also fisher targeting, formerly grouper and snappers shifted to catch this new opportunity. We have also, but this market, this kind of market also, have implication for women because when you have this auction have been introduced, gradually in the smuggling fishery, in connection with this new, chains, because you have your high value concombre is a high value, species, so it's happening. That is an opportunity for fishers, who sees an opportunity for, offered by a new market, but at the same time, it's the control of the fish chain now is of the how do you say we have the entrance of new actors in the value chain because we have now new products with high values and sold on the based on auction. The auction was not we never knew auction before, but it came with this new opportunity provided by market. That is opportunity for fishers, but with social, cost for women. Next, please. I have to. Okay. Now, outside the sector, you have the diversification, so what we call circular economy, it, mostly for, through trades. Next, please. Thank you. I'm sorry for having very long.
Thank you very much, Ali, for that very specific case study, Langue de Barbarie, and really speaking to some of the key points about the nature of vulnerabilities, the sources of vulnerabilities, and also what viability means in that particular context, what transitions are looking like. So that's a nice picture of what does not only vulnerability and viability look like in a community fishery context, but also what are some of the forms of transition that you're able to see as a researcher in that particular place. So great insights. Thank you very much. So we have a bit of time. We have about 15 minutes to engage in some discussions and receive questions from the audience, which we have already started receiving. And if you have not done so, please write your questions so that we can read it out to Aliu to answer. So the first one is from Faluke. Faluke writes, God bless. Can you explain the issue of remuneration with no other source of income than SSF? The fishers must have some form of income from their fishing activities directly. Is this correct? Could you also explain a bit better your observations that pirogues in Guede Nadar are increasing even though resources are being scarcer? Are they returning from Mauritania? Is there something else? The first said that more than 80% catches are small pelagics, but in the letter part of the talk. Are you showing diversification of species and markets that would coincide with diverse fisher scoping and better? So that's a long question, but if you could briefly answer some of that.
I don't understand. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay. So basically, it's saying, can you explain a bit better your observation that the pirogues in your case study are increasing even though resources are being scarce? The resources are increasing. The number of the small boats in that place are increasing, even the resources are scarce.
Yes, there are two things. This is the reality. The figures I give comes from, even if I'm very, skeptic with figure, but it give, the different figures, even if they are not updated, demonstrate the fact that there is a kind of, how you say, it's a two process, evolving in a very asymmetric way. You have the crisis, at the same time, you have pirogue, we are increasing in size and in number. This figure I give comes from the National Agency for Statistics and Demography, who used to make some, surveys at national level, and this is coming. This is reality. But my observation is, you want me to explain the reason why there is a kind of contradiction, or?
Yeah, I mean, it looks a bit, interesting in terms of larger number of pirogues and less fish and fishing activities. So I think it's a curiosity question as well, because the number of fishing boats increasing in less fishing activities and less fish availability or catch efforts. That's the question mostly.
Yes, of course. But I think that means that the profitability of the fisheries is not the only, how we say, mean for fishers to maintain themselves, financially speaking. Myself, I know that, there are many fishers today whose activity is sustained thanks to, some part of the family who are, maybe having good salaries, big business who contribute to the maintaining of this fishing gear. Because it's very important, socially speaking. This is the reality. That's why even people who are migrating, for example, to Europe, like these young people, who are going illegally, also contribute. Maintaining, is a prestige. Maintaining is socially speaking, is important. It's a shame, it's a shame to lose, someone's, this is ownership. What does represent ownership,
Yeah. Yeah. It might be also part of the diversification that is taking place, so that you talked about, people
Yes.
use resources for engaging in the diversified activities. So yeah, I mean, and that question was from Mundus Maris, and Faluke's question was about with no other source of income than SSF. So you mentioned that SSF is the single source of income. The fishers must have some income from fishing, otherwise they would not survive. Is that correct? She's asking. It's not a complete failure. They still have income from the fishing.
No, they have still, of course, because if you can't work without income. But I think today, if you compare, for example, the capital using, for example, the intensity of the capital, required, for example, to have perceiling. In Langue de Barbarie, they have now, they even from, for example, 25, horsepower, 25 ou 40, 25, there were 25, 40. These two were the main. Up to 62 years ago, 2 years ago. Now they have 70 horsepower. You have fishers who just, buy equipment. Sometimes they have even no doubt. They have instruments that they will have problem, to recover, for example, the finance. They are sure. But the family sometimes mobilize, in order, to equip his family.
Mhm.
But this you can understand, the rationale of this, rational in bracket, when you visit this community and you see that, when they come from the sea, the outward motors, is treated like, more than a human being because it's, in the, how you say, in the saloon, where you're sitting down, when they have a guest, for example, you go in a family.
Yeah.
Outward motors is kept over there. It's like, it represents something, that is, I mean, I would say, the showcase of the family, c'est la vitrine. We are, you survive, that means you are capable to be, even if you are in debt.
Mhm.
It's a very, very deep, It looks like, even sometimes, what, anyway, I don't know, Fuluke, you understand what I'm meaning?
I mean, yeah, it looks like there is also investment in the, in the scarcity situation. There could be, the fishing efforts are increasing through intensification and extensification.
But the money, the necessary money to maintain, this fishing unit,
Yeah,
don't come always from the fisheries itself. That's what I wanted to say.
yeah. Okay. So we'll move on to the next question by Jessica Blight. And Jessica says, thank you, Aliu, for the wonderful talk. Do you think the SSF guidelines provide a mechanism to support the cultural dimensions of small-scale fisheries in Senegal? And you have a lot of experience in that, as I know.
The guideline is, of course, if you just, limit yourself to the content of the guideline, okay. The guideline, take into account, it's an holistic approach, of small-scale fishery. You have everything, human right, dimension, cultural patrimony, and all. But I think, the guideline, yes, take in account, but as far as it's just, recommendation without any, implementation and, effort, political weight by government, because the guideline is a nice instrument. Countries, engage themselves, validated and all. But as far as you don't have any action, I think there are some part of this, the content of the guideline, if implemented, should be a way to contribute, in, protecting, this culture, specific small-scale fisheries. But the implementation gap is still one of the challenging issue, for, the most important, issues such as, culture-related, issues.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that answer. So moving on to the next question by Richard Leon, and Richard is asking, or saying rather, thank you, Aliu, for your presentation. Can you explain the kind of fishers migration taking place in Senegal and what could be the reason? So are there any migrations taking place, and then what are some of the factors for that migration in the small-scale fisheries in Senegal?
The migration, the reason, rationale of this migration.
Yeah, I mean, are there any migration, and what is what are the factors influencing this migration?
Okay, but before anything else, I would like to just distinguish these mobilities. I like better talking about mobilities when we talk about, because mobility is part of the, the value of small-scale fisheries. And you have now the immigration is something else. Now, I don't know which one he's talking about. If it's about mobility, mobility is a without mobility, we can't talk about small-scale fisheries because it's a seasonal. When it's a seasonal, that means, they target, different species depending of the season. Then when you talk about, variety of species, you talk about varieties of fishing gear, you take variety of fishing ground. That means, you have to move, and in particularly in a country where 80% of the potential, meaning the 80% of the catches are of pelagic, coastal small pelagic, that are recognized as being, highly migrating and struggling stocks, moving from. So, it's part of the, I, I, I don't know whether he gets the answer.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking broadly about the mobilities, migration could be part of that. So there are variations in terms of how people move around in and out of the fisheries, in Senegal. That's okay. So again, move on to the next one by Navya, who writes, very insightful, and thank you, Aliu, for the presentation. How do you think we can operationalize non-monetary indicators? That's one of the areas that we work in a lot. How do you operationalize the non-monetary indicators of viability in fisheries governance framework? That is self-actualization, identity, cultural attachment. So
the last part I don't understand. How can we operate the monetary?
Operationalize non-monetary indicators. Let's keep it to that. Okay.
I think when you know the you can have once you have qualitative indicators, then you can quantify this. You can quantify for you. It's how to evolve from qualitative indicators to quantitative indicators. For example, the reason why for example, if the fact that despite the crisis and the challenging issue of having profitable fishing gears, cost transaction are higher than benefit. If you compare this, if you take into account this and the fact that all the effort fishers are doing to maintain themselves in the fisheries, the fact is that beside all this, despite all this, they are at least the maintaining of the number of pirogues, the number of fishers, this is a good indicator. It's a qualitative indicator that you can quantify after. It's like, for example, when we talk about a collapse of stocks, or we talk about food security, like a challenging issue in the face of fish meat and all. Me, for example, as I have no chance, for example, to be listened, by some, people like decision makers or some scientists sometimes, I use qualitative indicators. You have to, for example, just to take, for example, 10 years, there are some communities I'm going since 1990. So I know, what happening in terms of, disposal of fish, disposal of food, what people use, for example, to eat, the quantity of fish they eat and the quality of fish they eat around the same one thing like this. You can have. I think, there is a possibility to operationalize. But when you start from, qualitative, and you can compare.
Okay, thank you. So given the time we have, I will move on to the last question for today, which is from Derek Armitage. And Derek says it's a very thoughtful presentation, and thank you, and he appreciates your talk. And the question that Derek has is, you made an interesting point about the importance of distinguishing between the inherent vulnerabilities, because you said that a number of times. Okay, in the fishery, there are inherent vulnerabilities in the SSF, and the vulnerabilities that are driven by external factors, the emerging or new vulnerabilities that you talked about, that are driven by external factors from globalization, blue economy, and fish meal, and others, aquaculture and others. From a B2B research perspective, this makes a lot of good sense. But can you talk a bit more and give an example of some policy responses, about those, inherent existing vulnerabilities and the new vulnerabilities that are coming up? So how can some policy responses be made, to those vulnerabilities?
Okay, I think it depends of the driver we consider, because talking about this more contemporary, or for example, how you say, drivers, of I can uh, I think governance is an umbrella, but under we consider, for example, if we see, for example, the gas, extractive oil for extractive industry, for example, today is have it's like how do you say, bomb ammunition, meaning this bombs that go implications are multiple. It questions the right to for mobility for fishers. In Saint-Louis, the gas is built, the gas, the offshore, installation is built on the main fishing ground. That means, you take away, the fish. People can't fish any longer over there. They are not mobile. Fish is not available for, at land, also at the coastal, they have some installation that it impact directly, for example, women who are, I think, for this specific, for example, contemporary drivers, and it's several, collateral implication. I think it's a very important to see how to have a balance between, the the need to have a blue economy, the need to have energy, the need to have, gas on one hand, and what is to be, taken in account, as obligation, considering that, in the fisheries, we must have, some idea about, that the human rights, the human right, issue is also one thing in the specific to in the point of view must be also taken account, meaning leading to blue justice, for example. It's a blue justice, maybe, we have the blue justice as really a meaning, over there. How to make a balance between this need to have, to exploit gas and the need to protect small scale, small scale fisheries. If you see, for example, it's the same, for example, for fish meal, the same, But it requires, some condition having a, to improve, governance. Improve governance means many things, require many things. It's a political will.
Exactly.
Political will. With political will, we can do something.
And
even the implementation of what is said, we have the coffee, we have the ecosystem approach for fisheries, and then we have the guidelines that even resume all this, But if there were at minimum, 20 or 30%, in terms of implementation of the recommendation in the guideline, I think, with some, but it requires political will. We can, for example, gradually, for example, just contain, this kind of risk and this implication that really jeopardize, fishers and their communities.
Yeah, I think, there is also a need for more discussions around local level policies or country level policies. So the guidelines and the coffee and others are global and much more broader level. But there is probably a need to talk more about, are there policies at the country, at Senegal level, at the regional,
Yeah.
level, to at least take stock of this new, and the interaction between the inherent, vulnerabilities and the emerging new vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
because of the new drivers and all.
Yeah.
That's an
Yeah.
interesting aspect in terms of the transitions and understanding vulnerability. I'm afraid, we are at time, but so I would like to end with a big thank you to you, Aliu, for the talk and engaging in the discussion, or rather starting a new direction of thoughts and discussions about Senegalese small-scale
Yeah.
fisheries, which I'm sure is going to continue.
Okay.
So thank you very much, and thank you to the audience for engaging with Aliu today with very interesting questions. So we're now looking at our next month's webinar talk, which is going to be a case study from Nigeria by our country coordinators, B2B country coordinators in Nigeria, Dr. Sehu Akintola and Dr. Kafayat Akoya from Lagos State University. And they would be speaking about their case study in Nigeria, which is titled as Turning Tides, Climate Adaptation and Circular Bioeconomy in Nigeria's Small-Scale Fisheries. So I welcome you to that, and please join us for another webinar talk next month on the 27th of March, same time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.